So then, back on the subject of Chris Packham again, for a third time in a week. I'm sure you guys are almost fed up of hearing me talking about this, and I wasn't planning on doing another video on the general licence until there was something tangible back from Natural England. And apart from the release of the Carrion Crow licence, there hasn't been a great deal. However, Chris Packham, obviously as a form of damage limitation, because, the public really aren't behind him on this, or the media for the most part, he's been invited onto Good Morning Britain to explain himself to Piers Morgan. Now, the reason this is interesting is it transpires that Basque were originally invited to come and be a guest as well in order to create some semblance of balance in the report so they could refute some of the quite slanderous claims coming from Chris. But at the very last minute, Good Morning Britain contacted Basque to say that they were no longer invited and they merely had a statement put at the end of the show. Now, call me cynical, but I can only imagine that this was because Chris vetoed their appearance, and because obviously Chris is a bigger celebrity, he was able to do that. That's actually really quite sleazy of him. And also, the video on YouTube has now got the comments disabled. So what can I do? I've got to respond to this. So let's hear what he's got to say for himself.
The concern for many farmers is that at certain times of year, when the lambs are out in the fields and they get caught on their backs, they're not strong enough to right themselves, the crows can peck their eyes out. And the farmers say, give us the chance to kill the crows, and then we can protect the lambs.
There was never any intention to stop the farmers from doing that.
But it seems to, may not have been in the intention, but it seems to have been the consequence.
No, I think the consequence is that the fake news has been generated. So I'm not going to argue that crows kill other birds. It's part of a natural process. Animals kill each other the whole time. That's how the world goes round. That's the first thing to say. So I can't argue against the pictures there. Also, I'm not going to argue that farmers shouldn't be able to manage wildlife populations when they are potentially damaging their income, their livelihood and so on and so forth.
So what are you arguing?
Well, on the list of 16 birds which are legally able to be killed are birds which are wantonly shot merely for vandalism. People go out to kill them not because they're farmers protecting their stock or their crops. Like which type of birds? Jays and magpies and crows. So if you go into the countryside, Piers, of a weekend, you will meet people who are out killing vermin, and when you ask them what they're killing, they'll say, well, I'm shooting magpies, crows, the animals that are on the list. They're legally able to do that.
Look, I can see a need to reform the general licence. So in that respect, if you take him at face value, yeah, it's not clear enough, because it was fudged together. Because, as I said in my previous video, we accidentally signed up to an EU treaty, which meant that we accidentally banned the shooting of all pest species. And they thought, oh crap, we better sort something out. And they did it very, very hurriedly. But what it should say is, you can shoot any of these animals you like on site. You don't need to have any other means to protect crops or livestock. Just shoot them. And the reason I say that is this is a much bigger problem than agriculture. And from an agricultural point of view, you need to shoot them preemptively. You need to shoot them all year round. It's like when you shoot wood pigeon over stubble. The harvest has already come in. There's no crops there, so why do you shoot them? It's because they become massively overpopulated through the summer. And you need to ensure that when the drillings are put in soon afterwards, that they don't come and decimate them. But this has a knock-on effect for all other species. He knows this. And if this wasn't a deliberate attempt to undermine farmers, then why did you do it during lambing season, Chris? My Facebook feed is inundated with images of lambs with their eyes pecked out, with their tongues cut out, with their arse hanging out from corvids. He knows this. He could have waited to the late summer to pull the licence after the harvest when there's no lambs. It would have been a real pain in the arse. It would have been a real problem. But, whatever. We could have dealt with it. But no, he did it now. Now, call me cynical. You could say, oh, he's just being ignorant. But I don't think he is. I think this was a deliberate, vindictive thing to do to farmers. And he knows it.
It's a concern because you're identifying magpies as one of the birds on that list that should actually be removed.
Well, I'm not saying they should be removed from that list. I'm saying that people, if they have a real problem, those magpies, impacting not on songbirds, where they will be naturally regulated, but on their livelihood, then they can apply for a licence. The licence can be granted as long as they prove that they've gone to every other means of controlling those birds by scaring them or netting them, keeping them away. Then they can be granted a licence to kill them.
Now, this sounds to me like a form of manipulation of his followers, combined with damage limitation. It's a sort of slimy position he's taking here. The first one is that he's an ecologist, so he should be well aware of the environment that we have in the UK, and the environment is a artificial one. We don't live in a sort of self-contained ecosystem. This isn't the Amazon. Things don't self-regulate because we have a massive unfair impact on populations of species. So through agriculture, through cities and roads and all the other things, we have given an unfair advantage to species like corvids. And corvids, yes, naturally like to eat songbirds' eggs. You know, we could live in a very strange world where songbirds had too much of an advantage and, you know, they went that way, but we don't. In our situation, there's too many corvids. And so consequently, you have to get rid of the overpopulation. We have a moral responsibility to do that. He's making this argument because he's saying, yeah, you know, if you're having problems in your garden, of course you can shoot them. He doesn't really think that. He's just trying to placate people. But he's saying that because he's inferring that it's just a nuisance to you. We don't need to do it. But yeah, we do. Not only do we need to do it, we have a moral responsibility to do it. Chris is the same man who on his own website was complaining that you don't hear the Dawn chorus anymore. He offered it as an MP3 download. Well, why did you do that, Chris? Why did you offer that? Why did you complain about that? Why did you say that you don't hear the sort of litany of songbirds anymore? You just hear a single songbird and how sad it is. Well, the reason is because we have too many corvids. And you know this.
Do you feel personally under attack? Because I noticed that you've had to step up security at home.
OK, so the police have spent quite a considerable amount of time at my house over the last few days. We've had packages sent containing human excrement. Last night, I can't speak too much about what happened last night because I haven't been in touch with the police yet, but
Or something else, another threat against you?
Quite much more seriously, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, see, I find this disgusting. This should not be happening. You and your family should not be targeted.
Not just my family,
Piers.
Piers. It's businesses that I work with, small businesses that I'm associated with loosely. I'm very resistant to this sort of thing. It's part of a process that I will have to go through to affect change, and I am determined to do that, and I'm going to. So they can send me as much human excrement.
But what kind of thing happened last night? It sounds serious.
Death threats of a very serious nature.
Really?
Yeah. So they can carry on.
Against you and your family?
Yes, and I will continue to do what I want to do. What worries me is that the charities that I'm affiliated with, the small businesses that I work for, these people aren't set up to take this sort of abuse.
Now, first things first, if you are sending tweets and things to Chris Packham, threatening him, then you're a moron. You're shooting yourself in the foot. You're shooting us in the foot. You're making us look like the exact evil people that his followers think we are. And moreover, what you're doing is morally wrong. And we are better than this. You defeat people with logic and reason and facts. And we do it every day. And we don't need to descend to their level. But that said, he's loving this. He's loving it. Because he can play the victim. He can say, oh, look at me, I'm this big brave guy, and I'll take this because, you know, I'm this hero, but, you know, don't go after my friends. It's pathetic. You know, I get death threats on a weekly basis, sometimes more than that. I did once do a video on it just to point out, but it does happen. But I don't like to talk about it that much, and the reason I don't is because I don't see myself as a victim. And I'm not willing to see myself as a victim to get clicks, to gain notoriety amongst my peers, the way he does, selling himself. It's pathetic. But moreover, it's much more of a problem from animal rights activists because they see animals as people. It's like a religious cult. It's a form of extremism. I get these threats constantly, and these people really think that when they see me shoot like a fox, that I've shot a person. And if I did go to the police about it, they would say to me, well, you know, what do you expect? You put videos out there of you hunting, then, you know, that's what's going to happen. So, yeah, I don't have a lot of respect for him at this point. I really don't. I think that he's losing the battle. The public are against him. And this is why he's on here. And this is also why he blocked Bask from going on here, because he knows he can't stand up for what he said. What he really should have said here is that, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I brought this about during lambing season. I'm sorry I've caused the death and suffering of thousands of sheep. But he won't, because he's too weak.